To turn the machine on, turn the on switch to on position and press the reset button. You'll see the screen starts to turn on. That's its loading phase. During this, you can twist the e-stop to the right to release it. Once the program is loaded, a warning screen will appear. On this warning screen, you'll just take your stylus or your finger and press continue. Once the machine has come to the home screen and the e-stop is released, the hydraulic start button can be pressed, which will turn the hydraulics on. A new feature of the MPC control is that the HMI touchscreen is now in full color. Once on the home screen, some of the features that can be controlled while in manual control with the cycle selector switch are to view the alarm screen, which shows any alarms that the system currently has. The home button, which I just pressed, which will take you home at any time. The back button, which will take you from any screen back to the previous screen. And then also an inch and millimeter inch button. When inches is showing, the machine will show all measurements in inches. When the blue millimeters is showing, it'll show all measurements in millimeters. One of the new features with the MPC control is the ASMS, which is the Advanced Screen Messaging System. This warning system right here will display any system conditions that are not met. For example, if I was to press the e-stop and I was to try to start up the hydraulics again, it would give me the warning, e-stop is not pressed, turn to release. The first time the machine is started up, the shuttle will need calibration. This can be done by pressing the saw calibration button, which will bring you to the calibration screen. Next, you're going to want to ensure that your shuttle vise is closed, and then press and hold shortly the home shuttle button. And as you can see, it's zeroing itself out in position, and then will return to its full reach. Once the shuttle vise is calibrated, it will display shuttle calibration is complete, and you can return to the home screen by pressing the home button. From the home screen, the material referencing program button is to the right of the job programming button. When this button is pressed, it will bring up the material reference programming screen. The material reference programming screen displays all the information about a saved material recipe. From this screen, you can import or export recipes from an external USB drive. You can set the blade speed by pressing it and typing in the value that is desired. The feed force scale by pressing it and typing in the desired value. And the feed rate scale by pressing it and typing in the value. These values are just for reference. They do not set anything in the machine. They have to be manually set on the dials on the control panel. The color displayed below the feed force scale is reference to the color scale of the dial. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see a new button is displayed. This new material or edit material button is used to create new material or edit existing material. And this can be toggled by pressing the button. When in new material mode, you'll see that the new material name area is blank. When pressed on, you can type in the name of your new material, and it will display. Again, you can set the blade speed, feed force scale, and feed rate scale for this material. Once you've completed entering all your desired values, press the Save Recipe button, which will save this material into the system. To edit an existing material, press the Material button till it changes into edit mode. You'll see that our naming box has now turned into a drop-down menu. This drop-down menu displays all of the current materials in the system. To edit one, simply press it, which will display it here. It also displays the blade speed, feed force, and feed rate scale for this material. To edit it, simply press on a box, enter a new value, and click Update Recipe. From the home screen, you can also enter the job programming screen. This screen is used to program all jobs as well as edit all jobs. While in the programming screen, you'll see on the bottom there are some new buttons. We have a Clear All button, which will clear all the lengths and quantities from the job that we are currently programming, along with the new Job button. This button can be pressed and it'll display Edit Job. While in Edit Job, you can edit any job that is currently saved in the system. To create a new job, ensure that the New Job button is selected. Then in the job name box, you can click with your stylus or finger to type in a new job name. Hit return once you've entered the name you desire. Below the job name box is the material drop-down menu. In this menu, you can select the type of material you have to cut. Once the material is selected, it'll display the recommended cut settings, which includes the blade speed, the feed force, and the feed rate. To program parts to your job, in the programming parts area of the screen, you can select your quantity of parts and as well as your length. And this can be done for all 20 indexes. Each quantity can have up to 99, and the parts can be cut each 999 times. While programming an auto cycle job in the job programming screen, there is a trim and no trim feature, which is a yellow button on the top right of the screen. The no trim option allows for your cuts to be done exactly as they are positioned in the vices. The trim feature will do a single cut at the beginning, which will cut off the end of the bar stock, which squares it and allows for a more precise cut length. Next to the trim cut button, there's a job repeats feature. This feature allows you to repeat the full job up to 99 times. Once you have selected all of the quantities you desire, you want to press Save Job, which is on the bottom right of the job programming screen. This will save it into your recipes for future use. To edit a job that has already been created, press the blue Job button to switch to edit mode. You'll see that it changes the job name input area to a job name drop-down menu. By pressing the arrow on the right of the drop-down menu, you'll see that it displays all jobs that have already been saved, like we did previously in the new job. By selecting one of them, you'll see that it populates the fields in the index area with the lengths that were previously saved. To update this job, you can simply press on the number input, change your number, hit return, and then on the bottom right of the screen, press the Update Job button. You'll see that it comes up with an overwrite warning, and this is correct. You would like to overwrite the previous job. Once you are satisfied with either the new job you have created or the job that you have just edited, on the bottom right of the screen, you want to press Load Job to PLC. This will load your job to the PLC to be run in an automatic cycle. The View Load Job will come up automatically and will display the recommended cut settings as well as all the parts in the index and lengths that are with this job. From the View Loaded Job screen, as well as from any time on any screen, if you twist the cycle selector switch to auto cycle, the auto cycle screen will appear. On this screen, there are a lot of new features, which include the job status area. In the job status area is displayed the current cut time, the job time, the part of the index, the part that is repeated of the index, the number of jobs that is to be cut, as well as the number of parts that have been cut. In the middle of the screen, you'll see the recommended cut settings area. In this area, you'll see the blade speed, the feed force, and the feed rate. These are all recommended settings. The actual values have to be set manually on the controls on the control board. Below that, you'll see the auto cycle start conditions. You'll see that it has auto calibration complete, machine vice locked, shuttle vice locked, as well as frame up and or trim on. If any of the conditions is not met, it will turn red. For example, the shuttle vice is not locked, so once the shuttle vice button is pressed and the shuttle vice is locked, it will appear green on the screen. Once all conditions are green, the cycle can be started by pressing the blade start button. When the machine's auto cycle has started, you'll see that the shuttle position is moving to achieve the part length that is currently in the index. The blade speed can be controlled using the blade speed controller on the control panel. While in an auto cycle cut, by pressing pause, you can pause the cycle, which will stop the saw frame immediately and will raise the blade a little bit off of the material to save the blade life. To resume, press resume, and the cycle will continue from where it was and with the current part that it is currently cutting. A couple other buttons are the frame return and the shuttle forward during cut. The frame return button, on or off, determines whether the frame will stay completely down after a cut or will return up to allow the next cut to proceed. When the frame return button is turned to off, the value of this feature is to allow part lengths to be checked during the middle of a cycle. To turn it back on, press the button again, which will allow the frame to raise and the next part to proceed. Below the frame return on and off button is the shuttle retract and forward during cut button. While the shuttle forward during cut button is on forward, the shuttle will remain at its forward position for the entire cut. When the shuttle retract during cut is selected, the shuttle will retract and set up for its next part in the part index. During this entire process, on the bottom right of the screen, there's the button for View Loaded Job. This can be pressed at any time to bring up the View Loaded Job screen to see what jobs are remaining in the index yet. In contrast to the single cycle and auto cycle cut functions, there is also a fast cut function. This can be accessed by pressing the Job Programming button, which will bring you into the job programming screen that is similar to, or is the exact same as the auto cycle. From this screen, to do a fast cut, you do not need to enter a job name, material, or select new or edit job. All you have to do is type in your desired quantity. So for example, I'll use 2, and our desired length, and for example, I'll use 2 as well. After you have entered the quantity and length of the part that you would like to cut, or parts you would like to cut, simply press the Load Job to PLC button, which will load this job to the PLC. Turn your selector switch to auto cycle. Similar to the auto cycle, conditions must be met in order to start the cycle. If any condition is not met, it will appear in red. Once all conditions are green, simply press the blade start button, which will start your part sequence. Similar to the auto cycle, on the left side of the screen, there's a job status area. This shows you the number of parts that is to be cut and the number of the part that is being cut currently, along with the number of parts that have been completed so far. Once a fast cut has been complete or an auto cycle cut has been complete, A job complete message will appear on the screen and follow instructions to complete more auto cuts or fast cuts. On the single cycle manual cut control screen, a lot of the sections are similar to that of the auto cycle control screen. You'll see material reference, recommended cut settings, which are the blade speed, feed force, and feed rate, which are set physically on the dials on the control panel, along with the machine status, which displays the current cut time of the single cut, as well as blade speed and the current shuttle's position. For material reference, you'll see it is a drop-down. You'll want to select the correct material that you're going to be cutting. This will again display the exact settings for your cut. The last section on the manual cut control screen is the saw frame, auto return on or off. Similar to the auto cycle controls, this will either allow your frame to return after the cut or to stay in its lower position. This is toggled by simply pressing for on and off. After you have chosen your material and manually set your cut settings on the dials of the control panel, press the blade start button to make your single cut. One of the new features of the MPC control is the Diagnostics screen. While on the Diagnostics screen, you'll see 3 different buttons: System Events, System Alarms, and Active I/O, which is a new feature of the MPC control. First, the System Events and System Alarms will display any alarms or conditions that are not met in the saw. To clear any alarms, on the bottom right of the screen, press the Clear Alarms button. Also on the Diagnostic screen is the Active I/O. When pressed, this brings up the PLC's active inputs and outputs. The inputs and outputs in green show all of those that are turned on. So if you are in a cycle, you'll see different inputs and outputs turning on, which is helpful for troubleshooting. From the home screen, you can access the system settings by pressing the System Settings button. In the settings menu, you have access to user administration control, recipe control for jobs, materials, and settings, machine settings, the ability to calibrate the touchscreen, as well as cleaning the touchscreen, which freezes it for 30 seconds to allow cleaning without affecting the screen, as well as the date and time, and the ability to set the PLC's date and time. When the users button is pressed, you'll see that it displays all of the users as well as passwords. This is the screen where you can set passwords, which allows you to have control over unauthorized changes of settings and recipes. For further instruction on how to set users and passwords, see the operations manual that comes with the saw. When the recipe control button is pressed, it will bring up the recipe control screen, which allows you to import or export material references, jobs, and saw settings through the USB slot on the side of the control panel. Once an external USB drive is inserted in the USB extension, you have the ability to import or export each of these settings. To import or export, simply press Export or Import. For this example, I'll be pressing Export, which will bring up a screen asking you if you would like to overwrite the current file on your USB drive. In our case, I will select Yes, which will save it to the USB drive. Another example is to import, and in this case we'll use saw settings. You simply press Import, which will bring up a similar screen, which asks you if you would like to overwrite data, and you will select Yes. This will overwrite all saw settings that are currently in the saw, whereas the export would export all saw settings that are currently in the saw. The last button on the settings menu is the machine settings. When pressed, it brings up the machine settings menu. In this screen, you'll see all of the settings that can be adjusted. On the bottom right, there's a Save Settings button, which will save any changes that were made. There's also a Restore Settings button, which will restore all settings to their original value.